which the church in Hawaii, New Hope, started the institute and college that I now oversee. So there has been some DNA in our history between the two campuses. But the campus in Eugene has, for the past few years, become revitalized with just their really re-emphasizing, in a sense, their mission. They've become a whole lot more cross-cultural, more mission-oriented. And so this past year we've been working on a merger between my college, which was formerly known as Pacific Rim Christian College, to New Hope Christian College. So we did the name change. Now we're sort of better, stronger together. We'll see what that means because we're just in the first year of the merger. And our prior president is now the president. His name is Guy Higashi. He's now the new president over at New Hope Christian College in Eugene. And as I said, I oversee the Hawaii campus. Part of what we're doing together is to function as one institution with two separate locations. But the Hawaii campus, of which I know best, of course, because I just came to Eugene, so I'm getting to know, I did something with their faculty there, getting to know them. But the Hawaii campus has always been very dynamically multicultural, as Paul knows. 2 years ago, about a year and a half, 2 years ago, I met Paul, and I just immediately just felt a resonance with some of the cultural and theological questions and issues that have been coming up. So we started last summer a sort of a out-of-the-box one-day seminar out in the community, and we had a one-day sort of what I call kind of a cultural interchange or dialogue between Paul and Suncha Ra from North Park. And it just went over really well, and a lot of people in the Hawaii ecclesial and academic community got some attention, and so we invited Paul back this past summer to do a full course on theology and culture, which is really well received. That led to many conversations about what we can do together, because there aren't that many institutions that we know that have a particular focus, and not only just academically, but passion for this area. And so at least I recognize that in Paul with New Wine, New Wineskins, and the work that you all are doing to advance that mission. And it's been wonderful. So that's been sort of formalized in a document called Memorandum of Understanding. A memorandum of understanding from MOU with our college and with New Wine. And what it does, if I can just briefly say, is that it formalizes and intentionalizes would be perhaps a better way to look at it. So we're intentional about some joint work together, whether that be research, writing, shared practices, shared projects together, encouragement to each other certainly, and to be able to advance the scholarship in this field as well as making an impact in our society and advancing our common vision together. And I can't think of a better entity than actually New Wine for us to do that. So I really want to first thank you for all of the work that you are doing and you have done with New Wine. And I look forward to many years together. See, in Hawaii, it's like we live in such a cultural fishbowl of multiculturalism and multi-theological and certainly multi-religious, that sometimes we also need help to us being intentional about our environment, because it's like fish analyzing the water around them. It's like, well, what's there to analyze? If you read the book, The Millennials, that just came out, one of the characteristics of the millennials is, they say, is that we are diverse. So we're not intentionally or purposefully diverse, we are diverse. So don't tell us to be diverse, we are diverse. It's just part of our identity. And I feel that way sometimes. My whole tension with culture and theology, and when we talk about it in Hawaii, is that people outside of Hawaii and help us make ourselves more intentionally focused and reflective about who we are, which is a needed step for us to do. That's why I think, in that sense, we cannot live without you, because you tell us that we're living in this dynamic cultural encounters and challenges, and we need to pay attention to that and just name it, not to control it, but to find out what it is that's around us. And so I look forward to the years ahead, actually, for that to happen.
Well, many thanks, Randy. I really appreciate your gracious words toward the partnership and New Wine, and the feeling and the sentiment and the passion for the partnership is very mutual. And I would just like to add before opening up for interaction, by the way, this is Jeremy Nakasone. He's from Hawaii. And we're not a men's group. It just, I just realized, come on, Ron. Yes. Do something about it.
Yeah, the only woman is on the outside.
Where's the veil, by the way?
We say we're
Yeah, we're saying we're different. But just related to the partnership, we also need Hawaii and what's going on there. One of the passions, even last year when Sun Chan Ra and I spoke, and you of course know about this, but I'm saying this for others, is that so often we hear the Hawaiians saying to us on the mainland, come and teach us, more. What's the hottest, the biggest, the brightest thing going on the mainland, so that we can copy that in some way. And he and I were really grieved that we think that Hawaii has so much to offer the mainland, and we need this kind of synergy and this collaboration, this partnership. And so even at New Hope, when I spoke for the midweek service, I talked about talking story at the table, because table fellowship, hospitality, something you and I have talked about, Hawaii style, conflict resolution in Hawaii always takes on table fellowship, and that's very collaborative. It's an equal playing field. And talking story, and I don't know if I told you this, but even after the class ended, I was up at Greg's church, or Grant's church, Grant's church up on the north side of the island.
Yes.
And during lunch, after speaking there at the church, we went to an art gallery, one of the individuals from church, I don't know if I told you this.
No, you didn't.
And she said, Paul, there's this picture over here. Come over to the art gallery. There's this picture over here. It was Talk Story. And so I bought this picture, Talk Story, just about this idea of the kind of informal, though deep, sharing of life where you get beyond the trivial, and it's very vulnerable because you can really share your life in such a way that people are going to reject it. But that's so much a part of the historic Hawaiian culture. And in mainstream America, with how we're so into the globalization of things worldwide, we can so easily trivialize. And you shared that story about international market, which I used at that service. Yeah. You know it by heart. I only know it by my PowerPoint slide.
It's on my iPhone.
Owned by Chinese. Owned by Chinese.
Yeah. Owned by Koreans, sold to Japanese.
Yeah.
It just goes on and on.
Yeah.
But everything's made in Hong Kong.
Yeah. And so nothing's thick description, not a deep narrative structure.
Yeah.
And Hawaii has so much to offer the mainland on these matters, and I'm even incorporating it into classes here. So it's really striking to me what we have to learn from Hawaii so that we're truly global and not westernized global, but really truly mutual global. And Joe, you and I and others have talked about these issues with Micronesia and just these concerns that we have. We have those in other community contexts as well. So we see it as mutual. So if the AC could, and the interns could raise questions, engage, make comments, just so we have a dialogue. We have until 11:30, 11:20 or so.
Oh, wow. Well, I'm excited that this is coming forward, and there's an intentionality to it, because I too think that there's a lot to be learned both ways. As you were speaking about Hawaii, I, for a minute, went back to when I was a teenager, just out of high school, and my brother's football team was invited to go to Hawaii and play against the University of Hawaii, and it was kind of a tradition, Willamette University versus University of Hawaii, and so being the younger brother, me and one of my friends says, we're going to go to Hawaii, whether we're on a football team or not, we're going to go to Hawaii, and so.
Did you guys ever be to Hawaii?
Actually, I think it was a learning experience. I think if the
So it was a
record is
win-win.
right, in 1941, we almost did it.
That counts for something.
In fact, our coach was on that team in 1941
Yeah.
when Pearl Harbor occurred, the attack occurred. The teams were there ready to play, and I think
Yeah.
he could play.
Yeah.
Oh,
That whole thing, but the team stayed and helped, serve and, side by side with the other team. Pretty neat. So even in tragedy, there's a lot to learn. And so I've always been enamored with Hawaii, and especially as Paul mentioned, the whole conflict issue. I've learned a lot from my teammates, because I did play some football with boys. And so I'm still learning about how you guys culturally approach conflict very differently and holistically and in a very healthy way. So I'm excited to see this happen and see what's going to happen. Yeah.
How do you approach conflict, Randy?
Well, I think if you take the metaphor of the table fellowship, of the open table, I think that probably captures, because number one, we love to eat in Hawaii. And in a sense, like in Middle Eastern culture, if you get invited to someone's home to eat, that's an invitation to their lives, not just having a meal at home. And so you wouldn't, but what you would do is, it's a great occasion, like if you had a conflictual relationship in Hawaii, most likely what you'll do is not sit down in a room and talk it out, but it'll be over a meal. It'll have to be over a meal, because there's something reconciliatory, something more incarnational in a sense about having a meal together, because you share something together, which is the shared meal together. So with that in mind, I think that conflicts can be resolved in different ways. There's all kinds of layers of cultures in Hawaii. The basic Hawaiian culture is something we call Ho'oponopono, in which everyone comes together and tells what they're, basically you talk in story and I get to listen to your story. So, and I've got to take it very seriously. Something I did with your brother was there, the Covenant, which I was a member at and planted the Covenant Church in Hawaii. But they involved me, wanted me to work with all of the multiracial pastors in the Covenant Church in the West Coast. So we gathered together, and I had each one, instead of just saying, tell me your story, what I did was, and this is part of learning how to resolve or how to deal with people and understand where they're coming from. I asked them to basically name, by the way, let me explain the structure of this. I've been very influenced by the former Brazilian educator Paulo Freire, who says that the first step toward change or social transformation is to empower yourselves to name the world that you're around. Because if you can't name the world, can't name the reality around you, then you can't change it. So if you name it, what it does is it actually objectifies it. And when you objectify something, you actually can change it, because now you know who the enemy is, you know each other. It sounds sort of counter to something relational, but actually it removes you from that. To say,
What do you mean, name the world?
But name the world. Here's a more practical, personal example. I asked these pastors, these diverse pastors, all pastors of color, name one. Share, but actually name one memory that you have in the family life that you would like to retain for the next generation. What would you like to carry on from something that you experienced in your generation to the next generation? And so everyone sort of named their world, their memory, their experience. Okay. I don't know, it could be something like family vacations together, or meals together, or whatever it is. Or we had a tradition of doing Friday night devotions together. Whatever it is something that they retain. So all positive, and that was good. But that's just half the story. And then the second half that they didn't realize, but I just threw it out, was that, okay, now if we could go around the circle, name something that you wouldn't want to carry on to the next generation, an experience in your family. All of a sudden, whoa.
Get personal.
Yeah. But they were warmed up with the first part, which is what sometimes we do in church, which is really nice, but you've also got to look at the other side. And I can tell you, that part went on for over an hour, and it was a small group. I don't think anyone left there or shared something without tears. And stories, for example, of the abuse that they experienced was just powerful. It was surprising, powerful, moving, poignant. And in the sharing of that particular memory or story, you could see that there was a release, a kind of a coming to peace about who they were, because part of the reconciliation is to create an environment where people can now share what their experience has been, and that in itself can be healing. I'm just here to listen to you. No judgments, no comments, no advice, no asking for confession or repentance, but just speak out of your heart, and you could just feel it, that the air was thick with that, and each one went out. And when the first person, I forget who it was, when the first person shared, then that gave almost permission in the group that you can do. That's the power of the group, it's positively, and allowed permission. And I couldn't believe more than half of the pastors had some story of painful abuse in their family that they will not carry on or promote to the next generation. And that, I think we said amen and ended it there. But that's the power of what it means. Because the first thing that they needed to do is almost reconcile themselves to their families, to the past, reconcile to God. God, why did you put me in this place? Before we can reconcile with our sisters and brothers outside. So it starts at home. So that's part of the naming. That's part of the naming and doing that. The way Ferry did it is that he took pictures. He used visual. He actually took pictures of what you and I would call exploitive situations or situations of injustice. And no judgment, just say, explain what's going on. Name this because you've seen this. And it could be an exchange of an adult exploiting a young person or whatever it might be. It could be a financial exchange, personal exchange, and so the social realities around, and then gave them an understanding. So when you start to articulate, when you start to speak into the world, so there's a phenomenological foundation to this. As you speak into the world, it becomes something that's very, very different and powerful. And then what happened was that many of these young people, children actually, and young people, started to realize, this is my world, and this world is not right. What can we do about it? And so what Ferry did was, he was an educator now, taught them how to read and write. And so as they wrote, that gave them power now to name their world very powerfully, to name the reality that needed changing. And so this whole process is something, there's a Portuguese word for it, but in English it's called conscientization, the raising of our consciousness to the point where we're able to make change. Well, the Brazilian authorities didn't, obviously like that. And so Ferry lived for the rest of his life in exile. He came to the United States. And so he wrote several volumes of books on this. But his signature book is something called Pedagogy of the Oppressed. And it's amazing how this work has been seminal to other, even hermeneutical enterprises that have encouraged biblical scholars to look at first century Palestine and see that what Jesus did in his parables was exactly the same thing. To help people, the peasants, basically first century peasants, to name their world. And he has a very, very interesting hermeneutical approach, I think, toward what the parables might mean. Not to serve the kingdom or serve the power, the empire, but also to Jesus wanted to live with the people themselves for that. So that's education. Here's Ferry's phrase that I've adopted in my life for the past at least 35 years. Education either legitimates or it liberates. In other words, it either domesticates you to where you have been, or it actually liberates you. And of course, it's about being free to do that. So That's why my field and my work has been in education, has always had a liberative, emancipatory dimension. It's not about teaching the tradition, but it's helping people to understand the world they live in light of the tradition, so that you can be transformed into the future. You don't have to carry on the past into the future. Same thing personally. What is it that you don't want the next generation to experience? And that's what we need to ask in a larger sense, not just in a personal sense.
And I think that's really key for the partnership. You know, in terms of the shared passion for theology of culture. Randy put me on to this book, Pedagogy of the Oppressed, this summer. We've since incorporated it into the internship program. It's a book that we're going to be looking for interns to be reading, because we talk about the pedagogical dimension, dialogical pedagogy, where you're not looking at the person as a blank slate, but that the person who's being educated has something vital to contribute, which is bound up with his framework, right?
Yes, exactly. Yeah.
So, in fact, we're hoping that Randy will be also teaching in the Doctrine of Ministry track for new wineskins in that sphere of what Freire was talking about. And so, if you could just share briefly, I mean, we've talked about this, what's the word for white man in India and Micronesia? At the intern retreat, you guys asked Joe and a gentleman named Sam, who's one of the interns, so, what's the word for white man? And again, I'm not out to take shots at white men like Bob or Ron, or just myself. But and then Cliff, if you could just share about some of the things you've done in that regard. But even Portland, Richard White, Portland State University, urban renewal, ask an African American, they'll say Negro removal. And I remember still the time when I shared that at one of the mega churches. They asked me to come on and speak on missional Christianity, how to engage the community. I referred to it as an urbanologist in Portland State said this, and this guy just got so upset. One of the lay leaders stood up and said, "How old are you? Who do you think you are coming in here and telling us this stuff?" And so I said, "Sir," I said, "Sir," I was polite to him, but I said, "Sir, the reason why you're saying that is because you're ignorant." And again, I was outnumbered 250 to 1. So I said this, yeah, might as well take a big hole. I said, you lack experience on this. If you walk the streets of Portland with some of my African American pastor friends, if you were willing to do that, they could share with you another side of Portland. Because when White was talking about the Lloyd Center, he was talking about Portland Convention Center, those where vibrant African American community pushed out due to urban renewal, Negro removal.
Yeah.
But it does cause for reaction when you say these kinds of things, and that's why we're also working on conflict resolution. Because so often with you get into these issues, graduates of New Wine, how do you work collaboratively? Because we're good at one-to-one at times, the peacemakers group, they're not dealing with structural issues in terms of conflict resolution. So you're influencing us in that regard with the pedagogy of the oppressed and other matters.
Who writes that book, by the way?
Prairie, I don't know how
Paulo Freire, Paulo. Freire.
Thank you. So Randy's already influencing our outcomes. So could you just share briefly about even your Oregon Live piece, or the Oregonian piece, and then Joe about the other with Raywan?